A big thanks to microphoneforsinging.com for sponsoring this video. They offer the Sodial BM800 condenser microphone kit, which includes the microphone, a shock mount, a pop filter, a desk-mountable microphone stand, an XLR to 2.5mm microphone cable, and a USB adapter so you can plug your mic directly into your computer. This is a great budget-friendly option for aspiring musicians, singers, songwriters, podcasters, or YouTube content creators. Check it out at microphoneforsinging.com. Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and in this video, I'll show you how to make some cool retro 70s and 80s vocoder robot voice sounds using Logic's EVOC 20 vocoder synth. So first, let me show you a quick example of what I've done with it, and the lyrics to this are right up here in case you can't understand. So other than the vocoder and my vocoder source, which we'll cover in just a minute, I just have this grind machine bass instrument, a kick, and a snare, and the vocoder and the grind machine are going over to this reverb channel where I'm actually applying some sidechain ducking to the reverb. So if you're interested in the bass sound or the reverb effect, go check out my videos on how to create a distorted synth bass and how to use sidechain ducking with reverb if you want to recreate these effects. So I'll just mention this up front. If you're looking for a smooth, modern vocoder sound, and you're expecting to just slap this thing on any vocal recording and expect it to sound perfect, this isn't the vocoder for you. EVOC 20 gives you a very distinct retro-sounding vocoder. It's pretty rough around the edges sometimes, and it takes quite a bit of work to set this up. So I'll start by muting all of my instruments here, and I've just got the vocoder and this vocoder source track. So the EVOC 20, it's not an audio effects plugin, it's actually a software instrument. So I've got it loaded up on this software instrument track here. And what I'm going to do is turn off all of the effects here on the track, just so we just hear the vocoder sound. So if I choose one of my synthesizer presets here, you'll see that the EVOC 20 functions just like any other synthesizer. You can arm the track, and you can play in notes from a MIDI controller. So again, it's just going to play like a synthesizer, and this will happen when this signal option here is set to synthesizer. So what you have to do to make this work as a vocoder is you have to run an audio source through it via a sidechain. So I have this audio recording up here of my voice. Don't bring me higher, higher, just to bury me deeper, lower. So this first part up here, I sang it in and I tuned up the melody perfectly, which is why it sounds a little weird and auto-tuned sounding. The second part, I just sang all on one note. You took me down, down, down to my darkest place, and once again, I gave you everything. I can't believe I could go this far. I can't give up again. So what you can do with the vocoder is input the signal of your voice into the vocoder, and the vocoder blends and re-synthesizes your voice with the synthesizer in the vocoder. So I need to select the audio track of my voice as a sidechain input on the EVOC 20. So here it is, vocoder source, audio 2. And then I need to choose a preset that's actually a vocoder preset. Let me go down to Vintage Vocoder, and I'll choose this first one, and let's cycle through a few of these. Don't bring me higher, higher, just to bury me deeper, lower. So you're hearing my voice and you're hearing the vocoder at the same time. So what I'm going to do is mute the vocoder source, and even though the track is muted, you'll still hear the effect on the EVOC 20. Also, you need MIDI data on your vocoder track in order to create signal. So the MIDI data creates the pitch and the synthesizer, while your vocoder source, your voice, triggers the envelope or the volume. So without both of these two things, nothing will happen. If I mute my MIDI data here, you'll hear nothing. Yeah, so there's no signal whatsoever. So what I'll usually start off with is I'll start off by recreating maybe just the melody of the voice, if there is a melody. So I think on this example, just the top line of notes was the actual vocal melody. So it's a little synthetic sounding. Let's try a different preset. So the vocal tone is coming from my original recording, but the pitch is coming from the MIDI data here. If I wanted it down an octave, you could do that too. Don't bring me higher, higher. Or going back to my original example, you can play in different chords and pitches and rhythms. Don't bring me higher, higher, just to bury me deeper, lower. And if this signal option is not on vocoder mode, if it's on synthesizer mode, you won't get that sidechain triggering of the envelope. You'll just hear the synthesizer being played by the MIDI notes. Now, if you choose this ANA option, this is the analysis. This will just play you back what's coming through the sidechain soloed by itself. Don't bring me higher, higher. So again, in order for this to function as a vocoder, this signal option has to be on vocoder. Don't bring me higher, higher. So I've got a different preset here I created based on the clear voice vocoder preset. I think this sounds quite a bit better than any of the other presets. Don't bring me higher, higher, just to bury me deeper, lower. Now, this isn't in any way a full tutorial of the EVOC 20. If you want to know what every single knob does, I believe I did a video on this years and years ago, but the musical examples I created weren't quite that great at the time. But the controls I normally find myself playing around with to improve the quality are the Formant options here, and also the UV detection. So first, let's talk about the UV detection. UV stands for unvoiced versus voiced detection. So essentially it controls the detection of consonant sounds, so those are the unvoiced sounds, versus the voiced sounds, which are the vowel sounds. Because vowels can have an audible pitch or tone, whereas consonants are more or less just noise, this detection determines what is voiced and what is unvoiced via the sidechain. The sensitivity of that detection is controlled here, and then there's 4 different modes. So when this is set to noise, what this does is it adds noise to the signal during unvoiced sounds, so the consonant sounds. Don't bring me higher, higher, just to bury me deeper, lower. And if I set this to off, the consonants are no longer reinforced by noise. Don't bring me higher, higher. So you can still tell where the consonants are just because of the input signal, but they're not reinforced by the UV detection anymore. So the difference between noise and noise plus synth is that on noise, the synthesizer sound gets gated out, it gets cut out during the consonant sounds, much like with the human voice. If you set this to noise and synth, it just layers the noise on top of the synthesizer sound. Don't bring me higher, higher, just to bury me. So I typically find that noise sounds more like the human voice. It's more characteristic of the human voice. For example, try singing a consonant sound and a vowel sound at the same time. It's not impossible by any means, but it's not a natural element to the human singing voice or the human speaking voice. Blend will give you typically the best clarity of any of the modes because it blends the original signal with the synthesizer signal. Although one thing to keep in mind is that if you have something that's sung in a completely different key than your MIDI notes, the blend option may not sound the best here because the blended input signal may clash with your MIDI notes. This is why on this second part here, I just sang one note the entire time. The note I was singing was actually the tonic note of the key of the song, so I don't have to worry about my MIDI notes clashing with my blended voice.
You took me down, down, down to my darkest place. And once again, I gave you everything. I can't believe I could go this far. I can't give up again. I can't give up again.
So the way the sidechain input on the EVOC 20 works is it runs your voice through a Formant filter. So think of this as like a multiple band pass filter. So instead of just one little band, one narrow little band coming through the filter, there's multiples at different frequency ranges. So the number of these bands can be controlled right here. So if you pull this up, you get up to 20 bands, pull it down, you get as low as 5 bands. So if you go with the really low number of bands, like 5, you'll get a more synthetic sound. So it's more synthesizer than voice. And at the highest setting, up at 20, you'll get the most character from the sidechain input.
You took me down, down, down to my darkest place. And once again,
but you may not necessarily want this all the way up for all situations.
you took me down, down, down to my darkest place. And once again,
I like the way this sounds between around 10 and 13 bands because you get a nice blend of the synthesizer and the voice. Now, in addition to the number of formants, you can also stretch them to encompass more or less of the audible range, and you can also shift them to give them a high frequency emphasis or a low frequency emphasis.
you took me down, down, down to my darkest place. And once again, I gave you everything. I could believe we could go this far. I can't give up again. I can't give up again.
So these bands are formants that are essentially harmonics that you can shift around to control the character of the voice. So as I mentioned earlier, the EVOC 20 can be a little rough around the edges. You have to sort of smooth it and polish it to get the sound that you want out of it. So I added some EQ just to kind of pull out some of the low, guttural low sounds, pulled out some of the mid-range and boosted the highs a bit. And then I added compression just to round off the dynamics. And then I added the Ozone Imager, which is a free plugin from iZotope, just to give it a bit of a stereo spread. And I added a limiter just to keep it from clipping. At certain points, it gets really loud, especially if you're using a low band count. If you go down to like 5 or 6 bands, the synthesizer gets really loud. But what you can do is you can adjust the level of the whole synthesizer right here. And then I added some reverb as well, and that's that reverb I was talking about before, where I've got Space Designer with a sidechain ducking compressor with some delay after it as well.
Don't bring me higher, higher, just to bury me deeper, lower. Don't bring me higher, higher, just to bury me deeper, lower. You took me down, down, down to my darkest place. And once again, I gave you everything. I can't believe I could go this far. I can't give up again. I can't give up again.
And there you go. That's the EVOC 20 Vocoder synth in Logic Pro 10. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. You can also check me out on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if you'd like to make a monthly contribution to the channel, you can also check me out on Patreon. Thanks for the support, and thanks for watching.